I am a pharmacist by trade, and back in 2010, when the earthquake hit Haiti, my life took a very unexpected turn. I found myself on the ground in Haiti with our church about 10 days after the earthquake hit. I stayed involved with the mission where I was, and I started leading some medical trips down there to support the healthcare facility. Got to really experience healthcare and the challenges in a country like Haiti firsthand, lived it, breathed it, and really developed a passion for the healthcare workers in Haiti and how hard their job is. And what could we do? Could we do anything to start collaborating in an effective way to bring about some support and some sustainable changes, given the realities that they face of very low income patient population, very few resources, and limited government support.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Crafting Wellness podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Barbara and Marie Claire. We're going to talk about the Dalton Foundation today and how it came about and all the great things they're doing in Haiti. And we're really, really excited to have them on today. And I know for everyone who's listening and watching, would you mind just kind of introducing yourself and giving us a little rundown about who you are and what it is you're doing?
My name is Barbara. I am a pharmacist by trade. And back in 2010, when the earthquake hit Haiti, my life took a very unexpected turn. I had no plans on going there, but I found myself on the ground in Haiti with our church about 10 days after the earthquake hit. And it was a radical, life-changing experience for me. Could not get the experience out of my head, and the people that I met radically changed my life. I stayed involved with the mission where I was, and I started leading some medical trips down there to support the healthcare facility that we worked with in Haiti. One thing led to another, and I ended up working for the organization. My husband and I both worked for them, living and working in Haiti, going back and forth with our kids. And it's just very fascinating how God moves you and uses you in these situations. But got to really experience healthcare and the challenges in a country like Haiti firsthand, lived it, breathed it, and really developed a passion for the healthcare workers in Haiti and how hard their job is. And what could we do? Could we do anything to start collaborating in an effective way to bring about some support and some sustainable changes, given the realities that they face of very low income patient population, very few resources, and limited government support? And so that's kind of what led me to the Dalton Foundation. Mr. Dalton was one of our funders in Haiti, and he shared the same vision and passion for collaboration. The foundation has always been involved in these type of collaborative projects. And so in 2017, I had the opportunity to leave Haiti and come to Ohio to lead the projects and the work that the Dalton Foundation does. And one of our biggest projects still is, and certainly my heart is, with the healthcare work we are doing in Haiti.
That's amazing. What were you doing before 2010? Were you living in Ohio then, or where were you?
No, I was living in Austin, Texas, and I was a pharmacist there, just managing some pharmacies and just a typical normal life. I had the privilege of traveling around the world with my husband and his jobs, but I had never been to Haiti. Quite honestly, never been to a place like Haiti. It was a radical experience for me, but one I wouldn't trade for anything.
Yeah, that's amazing. So in 2010, when the earthquake hit, you were in Texas and you were in pharmaceuticals. It's interesting that you were kind of already on the medical side of things when it
Yeah.
was through your church. Can you tell us a little bit about how your church was involved? All go on like a mission to go help after the earthquake. Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah, that was another crazy story. So right after the earthquake, if you can imagine, I mean, everything was complete chaos. The mission that way I ended up at, their leader had met our pastor at a conference in Florida like 3 weeks before, just serendipitously they had met, and got to be really good friends. And our church was a very large church. And what ended up happening was the mission was pretty small at the time. Now it's a lot bigger, but it was smaller at the time. And NBC Nightly News, Brian Williams showed up at their compound because they were receiving helicopters and they had turned in their facility to the surgery center, and they were taking care of as many of the Haitian people that had been injured in the earthquake as possible. And they came and they filmed it, and they were like, this is going to air at 6:30 Eastern, just when NBC News airs. And this was mid-afternoon. And they're going to, and they go, at the end, we're going to put up a donate number. So this will be an opportunity for your organization to receive some support for everything you're trying to do here. And they realized that they didn't really have an effective phone bank to receive all those calls. So they called our church, asked our church if we could set up a phone bank, which we could, and we did in a couple hours. And so we were able to receive those calls for them, and I got involved with that. And that's kind of how it started. And then a lot of people from our church pooled together a lot of resources to start going down and helping. And one of our pastors at our church had been talking to some other people, members of the church, and they had gotten a private plane, and it seated about 6 or 7 people. And the pastor called me and asked me if I wanted to go. And my whole thoughts were like, why me? Like, there's like about 1 million more useful people I could think of to bring than me. But that's how it all started.
Wow, that's such a crazy story, just how everything works together. The fact that your pastor met him 3 weeks prior, before the earthquake. And for everyone who's listening and watching who doesn't remember, in 2010, that earthquake was massive. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was a 7.0 magnitude
So
quake.
yeah, the thing that was the most remarkable about that earthquake was just the sheer number of people that instantly died. I mean, it's hard to put your mind around. I don't even think they have adequate numbers yet, but they do have. Unfortunately, I got to witness some of the mass grave situation. They had one right near where the mission was, and I mean, there's any estimates between about 180 and 250,000 people died like almost instantly. I mean, in that earthquake, it's hard to fathom. You hear things like, oh, 100 people died here or 1,000 people died there. I mean, this was incredible magnitude. And the amount of people that were injured, walking wounded and buried was even higher. I mean, there's no one I've known in Haiti, especially in the Port-au-Prince area, that was not dramatically affected on that day. Hard to wrap your mind around that many people dying at once.
The help they must have needed and probably still need to this day, just the effect of that is, I imagine, quite high. Barbara, can you tell us a little bit about how soon after that earthquake hit would you say that you and your church group members were in Haiti? Did it take a couple days? Did it take a week? Like, how fast were you guys able to just get together and say, we're going here to help?
I think there were some in our church, some of the leaders got in through the military within days. I was about 10 to 12 days out when I got there. The airport was still under military control, but they were letting in a few more humanitarian flights at that point.
Wow. And how long, your first trip, how long were you there for helping?
It was just a week.
Mm-hmm. What happened after the week?
I went back home and tried to process everything that had happened. And it was just a lot. It was an unbelievable amount of stuff. And the next trip came about like over the summer. Our children were going away on a mission trip, and my husband was like, let's go on vacation, without the kids. And he's like, where do you want to go? And I said, Haiti. Like, I didn't even hesitate. And he's like, really? So that was the beginning of him going down to Haiti, because it ultimately ended up that we were both down there working. So that was just how it was, a gradual process. And we started leading trips, and then before you know it, he's quit his job and working there full time. So
can you explain to me how you got involved with the Dalton Foundation yourself?
Yeah, that was one of our largest medical donors when I was at the mission in Haiti was the Dalton Foundation. Absolutely loved working with Mr. Dalton. His approach, his big picture approach, his insistence on collaboration and how you can do a lot more, like 1 + 1 = way more than 2. I always say that. And I had that same vision. And so that's how it came about mid 2017.
So, can you tell us a little bit about the Dalton Foundation and what you know and how that came to be, how long it's been a foundation, how it started?
Sure. Mr. Dalton is actually grew up in the LA area in the foster care system. And, he has a whole very interesting story, way more interesting than mine, of how he grew up and through the military, got some training and worked extremely hard. And he became an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur. Ended up starting and selling 10 companies so far. The 11th one is here in Ohio that we share office space with here at the foundation. He started the foundation in 1998 with at least 10% of all the profits from his companies going into the foundation. And all the giving focuses around three main areas. One is obviously healthcare. We do a lot with healthcare here, but mostly internationally. We do a lot with the addiction recovery programs here in Ohio mainly. And part of that is too with the reentry community. We're really passionate about helping people come out of incarceration, get a second chance. So we do a lot with that here. The business here is an actual second chance employer. And then our third pillar is women and children. So any time trying to support those that are in more vulnerable positions in life is kind of our passion.
That's really great. That's really great. Sounds like, some of the most successful people I find are people who kind of struggled in the beginning and know what it's like and how hard it is and want to go and help other people that are in similar, maybe not even situations, but feelings, because you can in foster care or you can be in an abusive situation. And a lot of the feelings that you experience, the fear, the shame, the alone feelings, they're very similar. So I think that obviously Mr. Dalton has a lot of empathy and wanted to help those kinds of people who needed it the most. And that's really, really awesome to see what it has kind of branched into.
Yeah,
Because
it's grown a lot lately, we're really excited about that.
that's really, really incredibly inspiring. And I had no idea. So I'm really glad that we talked about
Yeah. Haiti's a pretty big piece of what we do, but definitely not all of it.
I had no idea. I know our focus was on Haiti, obviously, because of the medical mission aspect. Um, can you tell us a little bit about your experience in Haiti, most recently, what it's like there, what kind of help you've been able to facilitate with the Dalton Foundation, a little bit about medical equipment, what the need is there, and kind of just a little bit, give us a little recap of what it is like there now.
Sure. So the conditions in Haiti over the past couple years have unfortunately deteriorated quite a bit. The rising of the gangs, just the general instability level has just been gradually increasing, making travel very challenging, a lot less safe. We've had to cancel many trips. We've had to modify many trips. The rise in kidnapping, especially in the last year, it's been exponential. Some of the biggest challenges are around food insecurity and fuel, being able to acquire fuel. We host meetings twice a month with different healthcare providers around the country, and it's just constant with the supply chain challenges of when you have no fuel, no diesel or no gasoline. Obviously that stops the movement of vehicles, but it also stops electricity in places like Haiti because most places are running on generators. So if you can't run your generator, you don't have electricity and there's nowhere to go. And if you're not moving around goods, then you're not moving around food. And, it just kind of one thing leads to another. And it's a very challenging environment. We will say though, everything gets done. It just seems it comes in, the containers come in with the food and the supplies, and it's getting to places it needs. It's never easy, but the resilience is absolutely incredible to watch. But it is very wise to heed travel warnings there right now. My last trip was a couple of months ago, and compared to the way I used to travel, going anywhere, doing everything, that's definitely not the reality anymore. And it's not even about my safety. It becomes about the safety of the people I'm with. That is actually really important to me. You know, when you stand out, when you're doing something against the norm, you can become attractive to people that aren't doing the best things sometimes. And I don't want to do that for our staff. So we've been doing almost everything 100% remotely, you know, via the Haiti Health Network down in Haiti. And I'm so proud of the team down there. I mean, they've done an incredible job, you know, not to mention COVID. I haven't even mentioned COVID. We all know about COVID, but COVID's prevented us from traveling as well. So between the double whammies, it's really limited our travel. But the amount of work that they have done in the past 18 months is, it still even blows me away to talk about. My husband and I were talking about the other night, because again, we have that reality of living there. And he's like, it's just a miracle what you guys have done in the past 18 months. I go, yeah, but you have to have lived there to understand that. Because if you just talking to somebody that doesn't live there, you'd be like, oh, that's nice. But a lot of the stuff that it takes to make things happen, they just get it done and they do a really great job. So we're grateful.
Absolutely. How many people do you have on the ground there in Haiti?
We have 4. It's a small team, and we've done a couple of things. Our first thing that we started doing in 2017 was what we did data collection. So we've done, you know, in partnership with the Ministry of Health, we got all their data, and then we went and added to it. So we've got all the healthcare facilities around Haiti, with the exception of one department. We've done 9 out of the 10 so far, and we've got, you know, where they're located, what services they offer. And then we've taken that to a much deeper level with our one-on-one staff visit. Our staff has visited all these facilities and gotten the information, the details on their capacity to deliver healthcare. So we ask questions like, you know, how many nurses do you have on staff? How many physicians? Do you have electricity? How do you get your electricity? How many hours a day do you have electricity? What kind of tools do you have access to? What kind of medical equipment do you have access to? Do you have a biomedical person on staff? So all these things that actually reflect your ability to take care of patients. So it's one thing to say, oh, there's 15 clinics in this given area. But oh, by the way, in those 15 clinics, there's only 7 nurses and 4 doctors. They just rotate between them all, right? So it's a more complex question that we're trying to answer with this capacity data. And we have a really large database that we use in a tool called Relink Global Health. And we're able to utilize the data, we're able to share it. And with that data, is kind of how I got connected with MDF Instruments, to be honest with you, because we, as the business here now being a medical equipment business, we kind of thought, well, that's kind of our niche. We want to go into Haiti and see how we can standardize medical equipment in a given area and how we can help them keep their equipment working longer and better, because it's a huge challenge when you are dependent on donations. The amount of junk you receive is absolutely incredible, and the amount of equipment that can't be used, even if something decent is sent down, if nobody comes with it, or if there's no explanation on how to install it, how to use it in their environment, how to maintain it, it's not going to last. So that's definitely one of our passion projects, and we are working on that. But what we realized when we started collecting this data was that we had to put the brakes on that for a little bit and address a bigger need. And that was with basic care. Like what we were finding, and we were collecting the data, especially in rural areas, was that there was an incredible lack of basic diagnostic equipment. I mean, there would be a clinic, it might have 2 nurses and a doctor, but there's 1 stethoscope in the whole clinic. Okay, you know, there's no otoscopes, there's 1 maybe working blood pressure monitor, maybe. And so we compiled all this data so we could then see what facilities had and what they didn't have. And then we sat down with some other biomedical people, and we came up with like a kit contents. We thought through it like, okay, if we could provide them with a kit. So we designed a kit for nurses, We designed a kit for doctors, individual, that would be their kit that they could take with them, because we also know a big reality in Haiti is a lot of times you end up taking care of your friends, your family, and your neighbors when you're at home. You're not even at work. So we wanted them to have the tools that they could take with them. And then for the facilities, we designed some kits that had some more, more advanced equipment, more wall mounted type of equipment that would stay at the clinic so that they would have everything. So in these kits are things like otoscopes, ophthalmoscopes, pen lights, stethoscopes, blood pressure monitors, blood glucose monitors, nebulizers, things like that that are just thermometers, things that we take for granted as being basics. And we put those together in kits in mass amounts. And we use our database to know roughly how many nurses we met with, how many doctors we met with. So we have some ideas of numbers of what we're dealing with. And then from our data too, we also have ways to contact all these facilities and nurses and doctors. So we're able to let them know about the program. And then when we're ready to roll it out in a department, we have our staff arrange meeting places. Usually we do this with the Ministry of Health, and we set up like distribution centers. And there's an agreement that we make with the providers and the facilities, and that's that, we're giving you this. We want you to have the tools that you need to do your job, but we need you to give us some information so that we can report back to our donors and so that we can understand if this is working. Like, we think this is a good idea, but is it actually doing what we think it is, or are we just doing a bunch of work? So, we ask them questions before they receive the kit, and then we get them all in a WhatsApp group, and we follow up with them, and we get details after about 90 to 120 days after they receive the kits. And we're asking all kinds of questions. I mean, one, we want to know, did everything work? Was it helpful? What was the most helpful? What was the least helpful? Did the equipment break? Did it last in the Haitian environment? Do we need to change things up? And then we also ask some key questions around access to care. About how many additional patients are they able to see per week? So we compare what they reported before we got the kit, and then we compare it to what they're able to see after they got the kit. And then we ask them for some qualitative feedback, as well as like how the kits have changed their ability to kind of practice medicine. And those comments are definitely my favorite, of just how they talk about how just one of the big realities in Haiti is like a patient comes to you and they need help. And you, as a healthcare provider, you know what they need. You know 100% what they need. You learned about it in school. You know what to do, but you don't have it. You don't have the tool, or you don't have the resource. And so you end up referring them, into one of the larger cities. But the reality is much of those people do not go to those larger cities. It's too far away to go. And even when, to be honest, when you get there, it's a decent possibility you won't be seen for days, if at all. So what ends up happening is things that are minor become major, right? A minor ear infection becomes super major in 3 to 4 months. Things that could be basic become huge. And so our goal is to try to bring the healthcare closer to where the people live, and it will reduce, we hope, burdens on the other facilities that are completely overrun in the bigger cities, um, and just slowly but surely strengthen that healthcare system. And so we're really grateful to MDF Instruments for the things you've donated us in the kits. You've donated us stethoscopes, and the blood pressure monitors that we're using and sending. So we're really thankful for that. So.
It's our pleasure. You are doing such great work there. We want to help facilitate as much as we possibly can. I think that it's what you're talking about here is really, really important for everyone listening to remember that preventative care or catching things early really, really can affect your health in a massive way. You can't fix what you don't acknowledge. So if you can't find out that you have high blood pressure, or
Yep.
that you have an ear infection or a fever, or that you're not getting oxygen, or that your pulse rate is low, then you're just going to get worse and you can't fix the problem. And it sounds like, I was talking to a PA student on our last podcast, and he grew up in a really, really small town that was like 3 hours away from any major hospital. And so, like,
Mm.
and stuff, he said, we weren't able to go and like go into the do the 3-hour drive because my parents had to work, and like it just made it really difficult. So that's one reason he got into healthcare, was to kind of try to help people uh, get that care that they need all over the place. And I think it's an easy thing for us here in the United States and in countries where we have access to healthcare. And we get sick, we can just go to the urgent care, or we can find a way. We can go to
Mhm.
Walgreens and get a blood pressure monitor, or we can get a thermometer to find out if we have a fever. And those are luxuries that people in Haiti and other parts of the world do not have. And I think it's really beautiful what you guys are doing. The need is obviously extremely high. I would love to hear about how people can help, how they can get involved, and in a way that is actually helpful. You had mentioned, people can donate junk, and that wasn't something I really ever thought about. I never thought about like, oh wow, you could be receiving things that is not working, or B is not useful. So I would love to hear about what that need is, and how we can help as MDF Instruments, not only as our company, but also as a platform for people listening to this who are maybe just regular people. Maybe they're students, or thinking about getting into healthcare. I would just love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for asking that. And we appreciate that. So anything that we can get donated helps us scale the project much quicker, faster, and more effectively. So we welcome that. It is my dream to get every item on the kit donated from a lovely company like MDF Instruments. So we are really fortunate to get everything we're getting from you. And we're getting some pulse oximeters from a foundation in Australia, which has been a huge blessing. We got those right before COVID, and it was, whew, those were really helpful and timely. So, if any connections to other medical supply companies or equipment companies that particularly make otoscopes, ophthalmoscopes, a couple of the other things that we don't have sponsored yet would be great. We also have the kits kind of priced out. They're roughly cost, a physician kit costs about $125, $130 a kit for us to put together. And a nurse kit costs about $65 for us to put together. And so, we seek sponsors for those kits. Like I could sponsor this many kits or that many kits, and we'll make sure that all that gets done appropriately, and distributed, and follow up with the donors and things like that. Um, Volunteers right now, I would love to take people down to Haiti to experience this. Especially, that was one of the things I did in my previous job. Was I probably had anywhere between 6 and 9 pre-med or pre-PA or pre-NP students come and intern with us down in Haiti every summer. And it was just an incredible way for them to volunteer and to think about practicing medicine in a very different way. I would love to be able to do that again. That would be my dream. But right now, Haiti it's not safe for that. And so we have to put a hold on that type of direct volunteering. But I would say, if there's any biomedical people listening, we always have a huge need for that expertise to help us place equipment. We have some hired here, and they are super busy because the amount of knowledge it takes to successfully send, not so much the diagnostic kits, but some of the more advanced medical equipment we're sending, like x-rays and ultrasound, it's pretty extensive. The list of things that you have to think of to make sure that it works and that you have the training set up when it gets there, even though we do a lot of that via Zoom now, but we do it. It's pretty extensive. And so that's something we're always needing help with.
Can you just verbally tell us what is the website that they can go to donate if they wanted to donate some money for a nurse gift set or a doctor set? Is there a website that they can go to?
Sure. Yeah, so the general website to go to that's easy for me to say and for people to understand is www.relink.org. That's relink.org. And on that is a donate button. And when you click on that, it then disseminates out between the work we do in Ohio and the healthcare work we do. And you can then click on the healthcare work. So that's all in one place off of that main website.
And are people able to, if they don't have $60 or $125, are they able to make small donations as well? Even $5, $10, like whatever.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, anything helps and everything adds up. So absolutely. Yes.
It would be great too if you can't donate, if you could just spread the word, let everyone know. You can post on social media, to the website, just kind of spread the word about the work that they're doing and the need that they have to help people who obviously really, really need it. So that's another great way to help if you don't have the money to donate. Please just spread the word.
Yeah, and also on that website, there's ways to contact us and, an info at email that the staff and we answer every single one. So if there's anyone that wants to contact us to get involved, please let us know.
I have a curious question about Haiti, in your experience there. What is the water situation like there? Do people have access to clean water, or is that another problem that you see?
Huge problem. Yeah, it is a huge problem. So yeah, water does not come out of faucets in Haiti. You have to, well, there's a few exceptions in Port-au-Prince and some places where they do their own plumbing, but for the most part, you don't drink water out of any source. You boil it for cooking if you get it, and then most people buy their water, and instead of we buy it in bottles, in Haiti they buy it in like plastic baggies, and you kind of rip the edge off of the baggie and suck the water out. It's very scarce. One thing I observed when I was there, how little water the average Haitian drinks every day. It's considerably less than we would drink here, and a lot of that's just the accessibility of the water. It's very hard to come by.
I
And it's a challenge we're seeing now too with the violence has some of these key roads blocked off to certain parts of the country, and just their supply chains are stretched so thin. So
caused that change. Like I know you mentioned that the Haitian people, the gangs have gotten a little bit more brazen and it's taking over a little bit more. Do you know like what's causing that?
these things are always really complex, and I might know a little, just enough to be dangerous, but you know, there there's always a decent level of political opposition to any type of political environment. There was a lot of opposition to the past president. He was recently assassinated. Unfortunately, assassination is never a good thing, whether your president's popular or not, on July 7th. But there were a lot of people opposed to things he was doing. It was said he was trying to go against a lot of the deep embedded family control that exists in Haiti, and he had a pretty long list of enemies, and they were kind of fighting with each other, and it's pretty complex, and I would be totally lying if I said I understood it. But the gangs were getting more and more, like you said, brazen. Less and less was being done about it. There are certain neighborhoods and villages that were completely gang controlled. Police were gone, gangs were in control. I will say, since the assassination, where there was an incredible fear that things might just blow up, but they've been really calm. The kidnappings have gone down the past month. Things have been a little more passable. People are still extremely cautious. There's certain areas where just people are really, really cautious. But everything's been tempered down a little bit for now. But when they have to start having elections and things like that, it will almost undoubtedly flare up again.
Can you tell us, would you mind sharing a story with us, some kind of story of your work over there with the Dalton Foundation, and just being able to help people? Is there a kind of story that sticks in your mind that says, wow, this was a really life-changing moment for me, or any kind of inspiring story that you have from the work that you've been doing over there?
Yeah, I'll share a couple real quick with you. I think the first one I'll share it was actually in my previous job, so I don't want to say it was with the Dalton Foundation, but it is definitely one that changed my heart forever. And that was one of some twins. I have twins, and this was some twins that were starving and really, really hungry. And we got involved with their care. It was a really complex situation that I won't go into details, but just the way these little girls looked at you and to say that they were hungry and suffering, it just literally broke your heart. And we were able to, after some legal procuring with the foster system, be able to bring them into our care in the orphanage and to watch them um, grow and thrive and eat and change and learn was just absolutely phenomenal, and a hope. But even more than that for me was watching the doctor that was involved with all this, the Haitian doctor that was constantly advocating for these children, and how it changed his practice of medicine. I think it's easy to become hardened when you see suffering day in and day out, and he was definitely going through that. With, you almost have to in some sense harden yourself, or you can't take the emotion of it. But after that experience, just watching how he changed and cared for his patients and got involved even though it was painful, was really just inspiring to me, and is why one of my biggest passions is helping these heroes that are out there day in and day out. Um, in the job with the Dalton Foundation, I think one of my biggest things, and again, it's always going to tie back to the healthcare professional for me, because they're the ones that then give that care to the patient, and they're the ones that I see. But when we do different conferences or do different events, we like to do them. And again, the past 18 months, it's been hard, but we do sneak these events in here and there. We try to do these really nice events for the healthcare providers, at a hotel, and pamper them and take care of them and thank them for what they do. And just having them thank, there's ways to say, oh, thank you, oh, thank you. But like these sincere, heartfelt thanks, like, thank you for taking the time to do this for us. Like, we know you don't have to do this. Those thank yous to me they're just huge. They're not necessary. We'll do it without those for sure. But knowing that they're being heard and they're being cared for, it just urges me and spurs me on.
That's really beautiful. After everything you've experienced through your life before Haiti to now after, and how your life has grown and changed, and all of the things that you've seen, what is any kind of advice you have, or if you could go back in time to tell your younger self some piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh boy, that's a good question. So I do, my faith is really important to me, and my life of faith has really changed me dramatically. And for me, that's learning to listen to God's leading and do less. And I think that applies to just all things, even in addition to faith. I think I still am a struggling type A person that likes to do. Um, and I've really learned along the way that to be is better. And the way you do things, the way you get from A to B, is important as getting to A to B. Whereas when I was younger, it was all about you just get from A to B as fast as you can, no matter what you leave in the wake. And I think I've definitely learned that that's not true. The journey is important. The people are infinitely important. The relationships you make, the people you meet, um, that's far more. I mean, outcomes are important. I'm not saying that you can't just work and not have outcomes, but the way you do it is extremely important. The way people think about you after you leave is important. And just learning that over the years has been a big blessing.
Yes, I think that's so true. I think that going back to what you said about Mr. Dalton, 1 + 1 is greater than 2.
Mhm.
And I think that's also a really beautiful sentiment that you brought up earlier, that, you know, one person can make a difference. It's easy to think like, I'm just one person, what can I do? This problem is so big, like, I don't know how to help. But the thing that I think people underestimate is that there's a ripple effect to everything that you do. So it, like what you're talking about, it's the feeling you leave behind. That's a ripple effect that gets passed through to other people, that gets passed through to their children. That energy, that love that you gave, that care that you showed, that support that you were there for, that matters, and it makes a difference, and it changes things. And I think nothing we do is ever small, and I just want people listening and watching this to know that you make a difference every day, even in small ways. If you feel like overwhelmed, like, oh, what can I even do? Please just share this podcast with someone. Let them get to know all the things that are happening in Haiti and other places that need medical help. What the Dalton Foundation is doing. Every little thing that we do in this life matters, and it affects people, and there's a ripple effect. And um, I think even having gratitude, sometimes I'll be taking a shower and I'm like, how incredible is this right now? I actually have hot water and I
Yeah.
that there's people in the world who can't do that. They can't even drink water. I think for me personally, one of the feelings that I hate the most is being thirsty. I would rather be have that hunger feeling than thirsty. I hate being thirsty. And so I think about water a lot. That's why I asked you about it. Because without water, we cannot survive. Obviously, we can survive without food, but water is our body is what 90% water,
Hmm.
and it's something that we take for granted so much. And I just think that having gratitude for what's in front of you and all the access that you have, and using that to remember instead of thinking about all the things you don't have, maybe have gratitude for the things that you do have, and then realize that you have way more than you need. And how can you help other people just be able to live, just to survive? Is I think really an important message. And I just thank you so much for all of the work that you and the Dalton Foundation are doing. It's really incredible in all the facets that you're involved in, and your husband too. And light just spreads more light. And I think that's also something to remember, that by you doing something great, and inspired your husband to do something great. And it just keeps going, and then people will hear this podcast and they'll also want to do something great. So great doesn't have to mean great as in big. It can be small. Because
I think it mostly means small, to be honest with you. And I think that's one thing you pointed out that I couldn't agree with more. And so easy to forget. Sometimes the littlest things we do are the absolute biggest. And if you're a parent, sometimes you think, oh, what am I doing? I'm taking care of kids. Yeah, that's like the most important thing you can possibly do. Take care of your kids and let them know that they're loved and grow up to be all they can be. Like, that's so important. Never underestimate little things like that and times like that and little interactions you have. And I think about that, and there's many times even in this work where I'm thinking, oh my gosh, are we making a difference? And it's just like, we're never going to know all the impact we have. You just keep taking one step at a time, do the next right thing, right? Whatever that is, just do it. And you won't know all the outcomes. And that's okay.
changes the world, though. It really does. It changes the world. You just can't see it because it's so big,
Yeah, and we have to be okay with that. I mean, I prefer, it's like, oh, I like to know, but it's like, no, we just have to not know. We just have to have
I think that's
comfort in knowing we did the right thing.
what faith steps in too. I think just knowing that by doing the right thing and following your heart and trying to give back and help others, that you just have the faith that it's making a difference and it is making a change. And that's what faith is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, would you mind, Barbara, just telling everybody what any social media handles you have that they could follow, any websites that they could go to follow? Obviously, we'll be linking everything below in this video so you can click and find out more, but just verbally would be great too for everyone who's listening.
Sure. Yes. So we have a Dalton Foundation website. That's the daltonfoundation.org. We have a Haiti Health Network website. That's haitihealthnetwork.org. And those are our two main sites. We do have a Facebook group for both the Dalton Foundation. That one's not nearly as active, but the Haiti Health Network is extremely active. People can ask to join that group and we'll let them be a part of that and see. We do all very detailed communication about healthcare in Haiti. Like right now, the hot topic is the vaccine and the rollout that's going on in Haiti. And we've got up-to-date details on when and where anybody can get the vaccine in Haiti. So.
Well, Barbara, thank you so much for joining our Crafting Wellness podcast today. It's been such a pleasure talking with you. I would definitely love to do this again and kind of just revisit some things that we didn't get a chance to talk to today. And hopefully she'll be able to join us as well so that we can all kind of talk to each other. But it's been such a pleasure having you on, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Brooke. It's been great.